just have a cup of tea and a chat, really. I thought I'd talk you through my STEM journey and where I'm up to right now in terms of PhD. Some of you that follow me on Instagram probably already know this, but I thought I would have a little chat about it today and pair it with a cup of tea. Oh, a bit hot, good old Yorkshire. So I'm Beth. If you are new around here, I make videos about science, living with tinnitus and what it's like to do a PhD. If that's your kind of thing, then please consider subscribing. And if you don't already, then please click that notification bell so you can be notified when I release a new video. So let's dive right in then. So at school, I was kind of like an average student. I don't really know what that means. I was a good student, but I wasn't like top of the class. I wasn't getting A's and A stars. That was not who I was. It was not part of my journey. And that's fine. I'm cool with it. I did better in subjects that I enjoyed, which turned out to be the sciences. I also really loved history and drama, so they were the kind of subjects that I did well in, and they were the ones that I wanted to pursue after I'd finished my GCSEs. At my school, I did a mixture of GCSEs and BTECs depending on the subject, and I came out with a lot of GCSEs and BTECs and I did very well, but again, like I said, I wasn't like, you know, top of the class getting A stars and stuff, but I was still very proud of what I did. And I still put a lot of effort and work into it because I'm one of those people that I can't just remember stuff, and exams always made me very nervous, so I had to work hard to be able to get the grades that I got. So flash forward to A-levels. A-levels were probably the worst thing in the world. If you're in the UK, you probably know that A-levels absolutely suck. These are your qualifications that you need to get in order to go to university. And wow, it is a step up from GCSE. It's really intense and it's all very focused on getting you to university and, you know, being the college or sixth form that has the best grades and students that went to like Oxbridge and stuff like that. So it's very focused on numbers and grades and not really each individual's experience. And for me as a first gen prospective university student, it was quite scary and new, and you know, me and my family had no idea what we were getting ourselves into in terms of the university journey, so it was quite an intense time. I studied biology, chemistry, history and English lit, but we rapidly dropped English lit because I think it ruined every great book for me. Yeah, I really loved history. I was actually considering doing a history degree, but I didn't really know what you could do with a history degree. Whereas now I'm thinking, oh my god, a history degree would have been pretty awesome. There's loads of things you can do with a history degree. Anyway, I was always interested in the sciences at school, and I was very interested in biology when I got to A-level. And I was kind of thinking, oh yeah, I really love history, but I'd rather keep that as a hobby and something that I'm actually interested in. And I thought that I wanted to be a doctor, but a little bit squeamish. And also I knew that I would never get the grades to be a doctor, and my maths let me down all of the time. And that's fine. So I'd kind of like gotten that out of my system and been like, oh, it would have been cool, but also I probably wouldn't have made a very good doctor if I'm being truthful. But I kind of thought, well, I'd like to do something medical related, but I'm not really sure what. So I then had the idea of pursuing biology focused degree, and more specifically biochemistry, in the hope to do medical research. But I didn't know what that meant. I didn't really know what research was. I kind of just thought that I would end up working for like a pharmaceutical company and just do research that way. And that was kind of the only idea that I had of what scientific research was. So that was my goal, so to speak. I didn't do particularly well in my A-levels. Did anyone? I was not in a good place mentally, and the A-levels were just so intense, and I took very hard subjects, and it was very much a shock to the system that I was clearly not ready for. And I applied for universities that probably were a little bit higher than the grades that I could actually achieve on a good day. So I was aiming pretty high. It felt like you had to go for like the best of the best when it came to universities. So naturally, I didn't get into my first choice university, and I was absolutely gutted, but in hindsight, it really doesn't matter. I managed to go through clearing, which clearing is this scheme in the UK where if you don't get into your first choice university, it's basically like a catalogue of universities that have spaces available for the particular course that you want, and you can assess what grade boundaries they would actually accept. And that's how I went to the University of Huddersfield to study biochemistry. So I was a bit gutted because it wasn't my first choice, but I had visited it and I did actually like the university. To be honest with you, like, I think the University of Huddersfield is quite a working class university, and that really made me feel like I fit in a bit more, and myself and a lot of my friends all worked alongside their degrees, so that kind of felt good at the same time as well, whereas some of the other kind of, let's say, middle class universities wasn't kind of normalised to work whilst doing your degree. So Huddersfield was great, the course was fantastic. I met some incredible people that are still friends now, and hopefully they're lifelong friends. I had such a great experience. I grew massively as a person, and my degree was really good. Like, I had a lot of practical experience, like so much practical experience that I feel so fortunate, and the modules that we had were very varied and my lecturers were very good. I mean, not every single one, you can't have it all, it can't all be perfect, but I really enjoyed it. And then when I got to university, I feel like that was the first time that I learned what my learning style was, and actually how to take exams and how to study effectively and properly that worked for me, which I didn't really do that in school. And I think A-level, I was just so overwhelmed with the sheer amount of work that I had to do in 2 years. So the degree was kind of where I flourished, actually, I think, in my academic career. I also did a placement year in the third year of my degree, so my degree was a total of 4 years, but in my third year I went on a year-long placement, and I honestly applied pretty much everywhere that you could possibly apply, and I got rejected by loads, absolutely loads. I got an interview for a place where they were doing kind of like forensic stuff and like analytical chemistry, and I was very interested in that, but I was like, oh no, I really want to do like the medical research thing. And they had a scheme, the University of Huddersfield had a scheme with the University of Leeds at an institute called the Leeds Institute of Cardiovascular and Metabolic Medicine, like and I was like, I read all of the projects that were available, and I thought, yeah, this is where I want to go. This is for me. It's like medical research, there's a variety of different topics. I'm not particularly fussy when it comes to the topics because I just really like science. And one of the topics that spoke to me was a drug discovery project in relation to thrombosis, and it sounded really interesting. And I went for my interview and I was so nervous. There was a panel of 7 people on the interview panel, and I've never experienced anything like that in my life. Like, it was quite overwhelming. What was I, like 19? I was just like, okay, this is a bit stressful. The interview was nerve-wracking, but I was up against a lot of people on my course, and I just thought, oh god, they're gonna get it. They only had 3 spots, and I was convinced that I hadn't got it, but I did. I got the project and I worked there for a year on my placement year, and I learned so much, and that was the first kind of taste of academic research and academic medical research. And I had never considered working in academia at all. I'd never really met anyone that had a PhD apart from my lecturers at university, and I just kind of thought that was for people that were like geniuses, like not me. But my supervisor there said, have you ever considered doing a PhD? I think you'd be a good candidate for that. And I was like, me? Are you joking? Like, talking to me? And then I was like, actually, it seems like the logical step, and also like if it's pretty much what I'm kind of doing now, then yeah, I'd be up for that. So I kind of went back to my final year with the passion and drive to want to pursue academic research and to pursue a PhD. And then it kind of all turned on its head a little bit, because I was like, oh yeah, I want to go back there. And then during my final year project, I did a project on cancer research, and I really, really loved it. So then I was like, oh no, I don't know I want to do this now. If you give me too many options, I'm so indecisive. And the thing is, I'm so open-minded as well, and like very kind of, I just like science, so like I feel like I could really get stuck into whatever was given to me. So then I was like, oh, do I want to do cardiovascular disease, or do I want to do cancer? And I was like, oh, I don't really know what to do. And my undergraduate final year project supervisor was also offering a PhD position, and I applied for it, but then I withdrew my application because I wanted to have a PhD or a master's at a different university. That was just my preference. I kind of, as much as I loved Huddersfield, I was kind of ready to move on, and I just thought, you know, it might be more difficult to secure, but I just want to have it elsewhere, whether that be master's or PhD. So I withdrew my application, and I ended up accepting a position in the lab that I did my placement year as a research assistant. I did also apply for other PhDs elsewhere, and I went to a couple of interviews, but I didn't get the position, and that's fine. It's okay, like no hard feelings at that point. It was kind of reaching for the stars a little bit, going straight from undergrads to PhD without doing a master's. So I worked as a research assistant instead for about a year and a half, and the general idea was that I was going to potentially do a PhD in the group that I was in, but the way that the funding was working, there wasn't scope for me to be able to do a PhD in the near future. So I was quite honest with my supervisor and just said, like, I'm gonna start applying elsewhere because I would like to do a PhD, I would like to have a career in academic research, and I feel like I, you know, want to really start that next chapter now of doing a PhD. And she was absolutely fine with it. She was like, I'll still try and get funding for you, but I just knew it wasn't going to work out, and I was kind of ready to try something new and maybe work on a different project, still related to cardiovascular disease but something else. And I applied for so many PhDs. Oh my god, so many. I had a massive spreadsheet that had all of the different applications and what I needed and when the deadlines were and blah blah blah, and they take so long. They honestly take so long, and I would spend hours after work doing applications and getting people to check it and stuff like that. I don't want to forget about my tea. Yeah, it was almost like having another job on top of my job. So I almost got an interview for one in Edinburgh, and I was really gutted about that because the project looked awesome. It was like tissue repair in relation to like cardiovascular disease and things like that, and it just sounded absolutely awesome. But they were really great. They sent me an email saying like, you were so close, and if we offer any more PhDs, then please apply. We'd love to interview you. But sadly you didn't make it on this one. I was like, that's great, like thank you so much for getting in contact, like I really appreciate it, and like they gave me feedback on my application, which is really nice because you don't always get that. You just don't, usually you just don't hear anything and you're like, well, I didn't get that one, did I? Yeah. And I got an interview for a PhD in Bristol. I honestly applied every corner of the country. And then I was even tempted to apply abroad at this point because I was like, well, I don't think anyone here is going to accept me. Shall I just try elsewhere? I got an interview there, and in the meantime, I went to a seminar at the institute that I was working, and this particular professor gave a really cool talk about their research, and then they also talked about, you know, the academic environment and you know, the toxicity involved in academia and how to change that, and you know, he's all about wanting to collaborate with people instead of compete with people, and it just kind of really spoke to me, as cheesy as that sound, and I like resonated with a lot of it, and I was just like, he seems quite cool, and he does research in cardiovascular disease. And I'd noticed that he was offering a PhD at the institute as part of the 4-year BHF programs, and so I went to go speak to him and said, I want to apply for this project, but I wanted to speak to you about it first, introduce myself, gave a bit of background, and he was just kind of like, this project is like a collaboration with someone else, and he's like, I'm not really sure how suited it would be for you. And he was like, I have a couple of stuff in the works, and if you let me know what kind of things you're interested in, then we can potentially sort something out. So I was like, okay, at least loose, kind of open-ended, but it was positive, and I was really proud of myself because I was so nervous, and I was honestly bright red in the face. Like, if I saw myself, I think it would have been so embarrassing. Like, yeah, it took a lot of courage, and I was very nervous, but I definitely advise to do that, as much as it's scary, because a month or so later I got an email saying, can you just come to my office? And so he's like, I've got this project available, I think it'd be well suited for you. It's like, I need a candidate that has, you know, done like a first class degree, which is what you got, particularly in biochemistry. So he's like, if you like the look of the project, then please let me know, and we can start like as soon as possible, essentially. And the project sounded really interesting. It was looking at platelets in relation to cardiovascular disease and working with cells, which is something that I wanted to do, and there was just a lot of techniques that I'd not done before. So in terms of my own kind of development, it felt right to go ahead with that. So I did, and it all kind of happened really fast because my contract was coming to an end as a research assistant, and then I asked my supervisor not to renew it because I was going to go do a PhD in this other lab, which is in the same building. It felt very awkward and a little bit weird doing that, but it's kind of worked out really well because I didn't need to move. Like, I didn't need to move, I could stay in the flat that I was in. My partner had just moved down from Edinburgh, so it would have been really ironic if we had to move again. So it was just kind of like, it worked out really well, and I finished my research assistant job in the December, and I started my PhD in the January, and it was it was kind of seamless. Like, in terms of like pay, it was really confusing because like going from a staff member to a student, universities can't deal with that very well. Just FYI, like the IT department had a right field day with that switcheroo. Yeah, it was a nightmare. I had 2 email addresses for the best part of 3 months, and so I kept missing emails from people because they were emailing my staff account. And I was like, please, can you cancel this, because it's getting very, very confusing. If you do go from a staff member to a student, make sure that is sorted because it gets very, very confusing. So I started my PhD in January of 2019, which seems an absolute lifetime ago because a lot has happened since then, as we know. The old COVID sitch, that was fun. So my first year went well. It was busy. I think I set myself quite high expectations because I'd been a research assistant. So on the one hand, I was very comfortable in the lab, and I was very keen to just try things, and I kind of knew how to plan experiments and things like that. So I felt confident in that respect, but I felt less confident in like the academic ability when it comes to like writing and presenting and doing all those things. I felt somewhat behind because I was a research assistant. I just primarily did lab work and analysis. I didn't really do much of the other stuff. So that was a bit of a shock to the system. I was like, oh, I feel really good on the practical side, but not so great on the actual academic and theoretical side of things. But it comes with time, and I did well in my first year report and transfer viva. Although my transfer viva, I definitely thought I was going to fail that, but they were just being quite strict and quite intense. But it went well, I passed it, So then I was absolutely raring to go for my second year, which was the 1st of January 2020. And we all know what happened then. So basically I had like 6 months out of the lab and that was a bit stressful. I wrote a literature review and that was probably about it. I was running things like behind the scenes. I did manage to go back early, and thank my lucky stars that past Beth had hoarded samples till the cows go home, so I could just process samples because we weren't allowed to take blood and most of my work relies on the ability to take blood. So there were many challenges. It had a huge impact on my mental health. I kind of thought, well, what's the point of even doing a PhD? I may as well just quit or pause it and get a job. But then I was like, no, Beth, you are in like quite a privileged position, like you're still getting paid. You've just got to do your best and like examiners and stuff will understand. So I just tried to do what I could. But at the time we lived in a very small 1-bedroom flat with me and my partner both working from home. My partner had to run his entire business out of the flat. So yeah, lots of challenges. It was tough. I did suffer a lot with my mental health and my tinnitus, you know, just was skyrocketing and I just did not feel in a good place at all really, which I presume a lot of people felt that way. I feel like a lot of PhD students did, and during lockdown that's when I decided to create my Instagram account and blog and YouTube channel, and honestly I have met some of the most incredible people on there, and thank God I did it then because I was really struggling, and it was reassuring to see that other people were going through the same thing and the same worries, because a lot of my friends and family don't really know what it is that I'm doing, and it's no like hate on them, like it's very niche, and you know, I'm still learning the academic process and like what's going on in terms of doing a PhD. Like I said, I'm a first gen university student and postgrad student, so it's quite a learning curve for me, my family. It was interesting and tough, but we made it through, and I feel like I am in a much better place now, but that has been because I've gone through an absolute roller coaster, as have many. But I am very grateful and fortunate that I was still getting paid and my partner's business did well, and you know, my friends and family were all healthy and happy and safe. So, you know, I had to kind of take a step back and be like, yes, this is something that I've chosen to do, but it's a huge privilege, the thing that I've chosen to do. Doing a postgraduate degree is a massive privilege, like it is. So I had to just kind of remind myself that I still allowed myself to feel shit and struggled with it, but it will all work out, as cheesy as that sounds, and I can only do what I can. And that's kind of where I'm at now. So I'm in my 3rd year. I've got 1 year left of my PhD, and I was very, very, very fortunate to get a 6-month extension because we couldn't take blood, and that's really vital for my project, the group's projects. So that's really helped. So I do have 1 year left of funding, and yeah, if I think about it too much I get a bit scared, because it's like, oh my gosh, 1 year is not actually that long and time is absolutely flying. What the hell is that about? Why is it going so fast? It needs to just chill. But I'm feeling good at the same time. Like, I kind of feel like I've got a rhythm, and you know, we're back in the lab and it's kind of semi-flexible. It's much more flexible than it was, thank God. So yeah, I feel like I'm getting there with it, and I just constantly remind myself that I can only do what I can, and I can only do my best, and I will get my PhD at the end of the day. It just might not have been what I thought it was going to be, and that's fine. Shit happens, life happens, so we just move on and we deal with it. Oh, I feel like this is much longer than I anticipated it to be, so sorry for waffling on, but I've had quite the journey. So let me know about your STEM journey. Let me know like where you're at. Let me know if you're wanting to do a PhD, if you're doing a PhD. Let me know. Let me know if how you felt COVID affected your work, your university degree, whatever. I'd love to hear about it. And I hope you all have a great day and a great week, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.